Stop worrying. Not because your problems are small, but because your God is bigger than everything you are facing right now. Worry convinces you that you are alone in the battle, that everything depends on your strength, your timing, your control. Faith reminds you that there is a higher power working behind the scenes, even when you see no movement, even when silence feels unbearable. Worry has a way of isolating you mentally and emotionally. Even when people are around you, worry convinces you that no one truly understands what you are carrying. It whispers that this burden is yours alone, that you must figure it out by yourself, that if you fail, there will be no rescue. Worry creates an illusion of abandonment. It makes the problem feel bigger than your support system and heavier than your strength. When worry takes over, your mind becomes a closed room filled with fear-driven questions. What if no one helps me? What if I'm forgotten? What if God is silent because I did something wrong? These thoughts don't just attack your peace, they attack your sense of connection with God. Slowly, worry shifts your focus away from His presence and locks your attention onto your limitations. Faith does the opposite. Faith reminds you that you are never facing anything alone, even when it feels like it. Faith is not the absence of problems. It is the awareness of God's nearness in the middle of them. When faith speaks, it says, God is here even if I don't feel Him. God is working even if I don't see Him. God is listening even if I haven't heard an answer yet. Worry tells you that silence means abandonment, but faith understands that silence often means God is working in ways you cannot yet comprehend. Faith anchors you to the truth that God does not leave when things get hard. He does not step back when pressure increases. He does not disappear when your strength runs out. In fact, His presence becomes more powerful in moments when you have nothing left to rely on except Him. Worry magnifies distance. Faith magnifies connection. Worry makes you feel like you're walking through storms alone, while faith reminds you that God is walking with you through every step of the storm. Faith shifts your mindset from I have to survive this to I am being carried through this. When you choose faith over worry, you stop interpreting hardship as proof of God's absence. Instead, you begin to see it as a place where His presence becomes more real, more personal, and more sustaining. Faith reminds you that God is not just watching your struggle from a distance. He is involved, attentive, and fully aware of every detail you are facing. Worry isolates the heart. Faith reassures the soul. Faith restores the confidence that even in confusion, pain, and uncertainty, God has never left your side. One of the hardest tests of faith is learning to trust God during seasons of silence, when prayers seem unanswered and nothing appears to be changing. The silence can feel heavier than the struggle itself. You look around and see no signs, no movement, no evidence that God is doing anything at all. In these moments, the human mind assumes that silence means inactivity, that because nothing is visible, nothing is happening. But God's silence is not His absence. It is often His strategy. Long before a sudden breakthrough appears, God is working quietly, deliberately, and precisely behind the scenes. He prepares people, circumstances, timing, and outcomes in ways you cannot observe. Just because you don't hear Him doesn't mean He isn't moving. Just because you don't see progress doesn't mean progress isn't being made. Silence is where faith is refined. When there are no emotional confirmations, no external signs, and no immediate results, faith learns to stand on trust rather than evidence. God uses these quiet seasons to strengthen your dependence on Him, not on what you can see or feel. He teaches you to believe without needing constant reassurance. What feels like nothing changing is often everything aligning. God works in layers, depths, and details you don't have access to. While you are waiting, He may be softening hearts, closing doors that would harm you later, or redirecting paths that would lead you away from your purpose. His silence is often protection, not punishment. Then suddenly everything shifts. What took months or years, unseen preparation unfolds in a moment. The breakthrough looks instant, but it was built in secret. The blessing seems unexpected, but it was carefully planned. People call it luck or coincidence, but you know it was God working all along, quietly setting the stage. God moves this way because sudden breakthroughs reveal his power more clearly than gradual changes. When something transforms overnight, there is no confusion about who did it. The silence makes the suddenness undeniable. It reminds you that God does not need noise, announcements, or visible sign to accomplish his will. Learning to trust God in silence prepares you to recognize him in the sudden. The quiet seasons teach patience, humility, and resilience. They build the faith required to handle what comes next. What you perceive as delay is often divine preparation, ensuring that when God moves suddenly, you are ready to receive it. When things don't happen on your timeline, the natural conclusion is to assume rejection. You begin to believe that because it hasn't happened yet, it may never happen at all. Delay feels personal. It feels like being overlooked, ignored, or pushed aside while others move ahead. The longer the wait, the louder the doubt becomes, and slowly the heart starts confusing God's timing with God's refusal. But a delay is not a denial. A denial means something is closed forever. A delay means something is being readied. God does not postpone blessings without purpose. When he allows waiting, it is because there is preparation that must take place, sometimes in the situation, sometimes in other people, and very often within you. Preparation requires time. Strength takes time to build. Wisdom takes time to develop. Character takes time to form. God knows what you are praying for, and he also knows what that blessing will demand from you once it arrives. If it comes too early, it can overwhelm you, damage you, or even destroy what it was meant to bless. So God uses delay to equip you with the maturity, endurance, and discernment you will need. Delays also protect you from outcomes you cannot yet see. What you want right now may not be safe in its current form. God may be adjusting details, removing hidden dangers, or redirecting circumstances so that when the answer comes, it comes in a way that brings peace instead of regret. What feels like waiting is often God shielding you from future pain. In seasons of delay, faith is stretched. You learn how to trust without guarantees, how to remain obedient without rewards, how to stay consistent without recognition. These moments reveal whether your faith is rooted in God himself or only in what he can give you. The delay separates shallow belief from deep trust. When the time is right, what was delayed arrives with clarity and purpose. You begin to understand why it could not have happened sooner. You see how every closed door, every pause, every setback was shaping the outcome. The delay did not weaken the promise, it strengthened it. What God prepares in delay often arrives with greater impact, greater stability, and greater meaning. From your perspective, it can feel like everything has come to a complete stop. You pray, you wait, you try again, and nothing changes. The situation looks the same day after day, and the stillness becomes frustrating. When effort produces no visible result, the heart starts believing that progress is impossible. It feels like you are standing in front of a closed door that will never open. But your perspective is limited to what you can see. Heaven operates beyond human timelines and visible processes. Just because nothing appears to be shifting on earth does not mean nothing is happening in the spiritual realm. God can be working deeply and powerfully in ways that have not yet reached the surface. Movement does not always announce itself. What feels stuck may actually be in alignment. God may be rearranging circumstances, positioning people, or redirecting paths that must fall into place before change becomes visible. These unseen movements are often far more important than what you are waiting to see. If God revealed everything he was doing behind the scenes, it would overwhelm you and possibly disrupt the process. Heaven works with precision. Every detail matters. Every delay, every pause, every closed door is often part of a larger coordination that you cannot yet comprehend. God may be shifting hearts, breaking resistance, or opening opportunities that require exact timing. When the alignment is complete, what has been moving quietly will suddenly become obvious. The challenge is learning not to measure progress only by what you see. Faith requires trusting that God is active even when circumstances appear inactive. It requires believing that divine movement does not depend on visible signs. What looks like stagnation on earth may simply be the final moments before alignment turns into action. When heaven's work reaches the surface, the change often appears sudden and unexpected. The door opens without warning. The situation shifts quickly. The breakthrough comes faster than you imagine. In that moment, you realize that nothing was ever truly stuck. It was simply moving on a level you could not see. Human logic expects progress to be gradual, step by step, little by little, improvement over time. Because of this mindset, when things remain difficult for too long, you begin to believe that this is as good as it will ever get. You adjust your expectations, lower your faith, and slowly accept limitations that were never meant to define your life. Worry convinces you that change must always be slow and painful. But God is not bound by human patterns. He is not limited by time, systems, or circumstances. What takes years through human effort can be transformed in a moment by divine intervention. God does not need a long process to bring freedom, healing, provision, or direction. When He decides to move, He can reverse situations instantly. Sudden breakthroughs are the often result of long periods of endurance. You struggle, remain faithful, and continue believing when nothing makes sense. Then, in a single moment, the weight lifts. The obstacle moves. The door opens. What seemed impossible shifts without warning. It feels abrupt, but it is intentional. God allows extended challenges not because He wants you to suffer, but because He is building depth within you. He develops patience, resilience, and faith that cannot be formed in comfort. Then when the breakthrough comes suddenly, you are strong enough to sustain it. The speed of the breakthrough highlights the contrast between human limitation and divine power. A sudden change also removes confusion about the source. When something improves slowly, people often credit effort, strategy, or luck. But when change happens suddenly, there is no doubt that it was God. The timing, the impact, and the outcome make it clear that the shift was not humanly engineered. God's sudden breakthroughs remind you that your current limitation is not permanent. What feels locked can open instantly. What feels broken can be restored immediately. What feels delayed can accelerate without warning. The same God who allowed the struggle has the authority to end it in a moment. Worry slowly drains you from the inside out. It doesn't always arrive loudly or suddenly. Often it settles quietly in your thoughts, repeating the same fears over and over again. At first, it feels like concern, like responsibility, like you're being careful. But over time, worry begins to rob you of rest, clarity, and emotional balance. It keeps your mind busy, but your heart exhausted. When you worry, your focus shifts entirely to what could go wrong. Your imagination starts creating worst-case scenarios that haven't happened and may never happen. This constant mental pressure weakens you. It affects your sleep, your decisions, and even your faith. The more you worry, the more powerless you feel, because worry convinces you that the outcome depends entirely on you. Trust does the opposite. Trust doesn't deny the problem, it reassigns the burden. It acknowledges the situation, but places it in God's hands instead of your own. When you choose trust, you stop trying to control what you were never meant to carry. That decision alone begins to restore strength. Trust brings peace, and peace brings clarity. When your heart is calm, your mind can think clearly. You respond instead of react. You pray instead of panic. You rest instead of striving. Trust allows you to function with stability even when circumstances are uncertain. It doesn't remove the challenge, but it removes the weight of carrying it alone. Strength is not just physical or emotional, it is spiritual. Worry weakens that strength because it disconnects you from faith. Trust rebuilds it by reconnecting you to God. Every time you choose trust over worry, you reclaim a portion of your peace and energy. You become less anxious and more grounded. Trust reminds you that you were never designed to handle the future by yourself. God carries what you cannot. When you trust him, you don't lose control. You gain support. And that support restores the strength that worry tried to steal from you. One of the greatest sources of stress is the belief that you must control every outcome. You plan, analyze, adjust, and overthink because you feel responsible for making everything work. Control feels like safety, but in reality, it becomes a burden. The more you try to manage everything, the more pressure you place on yourself, and the further peace slips away. God never asked you to control the future. He never assigned you the role of manager over outcomes, timing, or results. Your responsibility is faith and obedience, trusting him and doing what is right in front of you. Control belongs to God because he sees what you cannot see and understands what you cannot understand. Faith requires release. It means letting go of the need to know how everything will work out. Obedience requires humility. It means following God's direction even when it doesn't make sense or align with your expectations. Both are challenging, but both are freeing. When you stop trying to control everything, you free your heart from constant anxiety. Trying to control outcomes often leads to frustration. You force doors that were meant to stay closed. You rush decisions that require patience. You exhaust yourself trying to make things happen before the time is right. Obedience, on the other hand, teaches you to move step by step, trusting that God will handle the parts you cannot reach. Faith grows strongest when control is surrendered. Every act of obedience strengthens your trust, even when results are not immediate. You begin to realize that God does not need your manipulation or pressure. He works best when you cooperate, not when you interfere. When you focus on faith and obedience, your life becomes simpler. You stop carrying responsibilities that were never yours. You walk with peace and knowing that your role is to believe, to follow, and to remain faithful while God handles the timing, the details, and the outcome. There are moments when your pain is so personal that you don't even have the strength to explain it to others. You carry it quietly, smiling in public while breaking in private. Some prayers are never spoken out loud, not because they lack faith, but because the pain runs too deep for words. In those moments, it can feel like no one sees your struggle or understands what you're going through. But nothing is hidden from God. Every tear you cry in silence matters to him. Tears are not weakness, they are evidence of endurance. God sees the nights you lie awake, the moments you feel overwhelmed, and the quiet prayers you whisper when your heart feels heavy. Even when your words are broken or incomplete, God understands the language of your heart. Hidden prayers are often the most sincere. They are not performed for others, not polished, not rehearsed. They come from desperation, honesty, and deep trust. God listens closely to these prayers because they reveal your true dependence on him. What you feel is unnoticed by people is fully known by God. Sometimes the lack of an immediate answer makes you question whether God heard you at all. But hearing does not always lead to instant action. God responds in wisdom, not urgency. He answers in hidden ways that align with your growth, protection, and purpose. Every prayer is stored, valued, and remembered. God's awareness of your pain means you are never suffering without purpose. Your tears are not wasted, and your prayers are not ignored. Even when relief doesn't come quickly, God is present in the process. He draws closer in moments of vulnerability, offering comfort, strength, and reassurance. Knowing that God sees and hears you changes how you endure hardship. You may still hurt, but you are not invisible. You may still wait, but you are not forgotten. God is attentive to every detail of your life, especially the ones you struggle to share with anyone else. Waiting is one of the most uncomfortable experiences in life. It feels unproductive and emotionally draining. You want answers, movement, and clarity, but instead you are given time to think, time to question, time to wrestle with doubt. In these seasons, it can feel like life is passing you by while you remain stuck in place, but waiting is not wasted time. God uses waiting seasons as intentional periods of growth. While you may feel idle on the outside, something is being strengthened within you. Patience, humility, and discipline are formed in waiting, not in immediate success. These qualities cannot be developed quickly. They require time under pressure. Waiting exposes your true foundation. It reveals whether your faith depends on outcomes or on trust. When progress is slow and rewards are delayed, you learn how to remain faithful without external validation. This kind of faith is resilient. It doesn't collapse when circumstances change. And character is built through consistency, not convenience. In waiting seasons, you learn how to show up even when motivation is low. You learn how to pray without seeing results. You learn how to stay obedient when obedience feels unrewarded. These lessons shape your integrity and prepare you for greater responsibility. God does not use waiting to weaken you. He uses it to prepare you. If blessings came before character was formed, they could damage you. Waiting ensures that when change comes, you are strong enough to sustain it. What feels like pressure is actually reinforcement. When you look back, you often realize the waiting season refined you more than the breakthrough itself. It taught you how to trust deeply, endure quietly, and remain steady under uncertainty. The waiting didn't break you. It built the foundation for what comes next. So today, I want you to release the weight you've been carrying. Stop trying to fix everything with your own hands. Stop letting worry steal your peace, your focus, and your joy. Remember, what feels delayed is not denied. What seems stuck is already moving in heaven. God's timing is perfect, and His power is unmatched. Trust Him in the silence. Trust Him in the waiting. Trust Him in the uncertainty. Your responsibility is faith, obedience, and patience. His responsibility is the outcome. When God decides it's time, what you've been praying for, hoping for, and believing for will come suddenly, beyond expectation, beyond calculation, beyond your imagination. So let go of anxiety, let go of fear, let go of the need to control what only God can control. Lift your heart in faith, because God sees every tear, hears every prayer, and is working tirelessly behind the scenes. Hold on. Keep believing. Keep trusting. Keep obeying. And when God moves suddenly, you will witness the fulfillment of promises that you thought were impossible.